My friend, the chairman, again, for his leadership in holding this hearing, and I really appreciate the excellent testimony and insights of our witnesses. I want to continue to hone in on China, and we all know that China has a long-term strategy and a multi-pronged approach to usurp the United States as the preeminent global superpower. Within the purview of today's hearing, we've heard that China is seeking to secure and cut off key elements of the supply chain, including rare earth elements that make everyday technology possible. Mr. Fruth, in a post-drawdown Afghanistan, how are the Chinese exploiting the rise of the Taliban to secure rare earth elements in the country? What is the intel on that? And can you elaborate on the relationship between the Chinese and Taliban forces and other terrorist groups, perhaps, as it relates to natural resource extraction?
Thank you for the question. So I think that first and foremost, China wants to get rare earths from anywhere it can. So it doesn't matter if it's the DRC, Australia, Brazil. They'll choke us out of any market they can. Afghanistan, however, is an absolute treasure trove as it pertains to rare earths. I think that the Chinese, amongst Pakistan, were the first to recognize the legitimacy of the Taliban Islamic Emirate regime. And I think that China and Pakistan have complementary needs. Pakistan wants the the Taliban want the recognition, they want the humanitarian aid, they need money, they need assistance in governance. China's interested in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, their Belt and Road Initiative, the rare earths, and obviously they want security for their mining operations. So I think they're going to employ Pakistan and the Taliban to essentially manage all of the other insurgent groups in Afghanistan to ensure that there's a secure environment for it. In terms of the other terrorist groups, obviously, we've seen a connection between the Taliban and al-Qaeda and Haqqani over history. However, we saw the Taliban and ISK fighting up and through 2019 when the Taliban nearly obliterated ISK, pushed them through Nangarhar into the Peshawar in Pakistan. We assess that that situation has changed. There's an old saying in Afghanistan about turning your turban, and it's essentially a local reference to changing your loyalties to favor the victor. We in the West oftentimes simplify these groups, but there's a lot of gray areas in Afghanistan. A lot of ISIS-K members may actually be working as proxies for the Taliban right now.
Let's talk about electric vehicles and rare earth in that context. Afghanistan is home to key deposits of lithium and neodymium, two key elements in the creation of batteries for emerging technology, including EVs. With the fall of the Afghan government and China's likely emerging partnership with the Taliban, they will be able to harvest and exclude from the market key stores of these materials. Again, Mr. Fruth, what is the impact that this might have on the U.S. auto industry, specifically in the context of a growing shift to electric vehicles?
Well, a couple things. I think, number one, transportation is one of our 16 components of critical infrastructure. So I think the most immediate concern that I have is supply chain issues. If they can choke off the market and hold the American auto industry hostage, that could apply negotiating leverage and other policy matters. I think beyond that, I'm worried from a cyber security perspective about vulnerabilities that could emanate from China making components that go into these vehicles, particularly as they make gains in the autonomous and quantum and AI fields.
Well, this is what I meant when I was saying in my opening statement that the national security strategy of abandoning Afghanistan could be in direct conflict with the administration's climate goals and move toward EVs. But let's talk about the geology of Afghanistan really quickly. The United States has conducted geological surveys of Afghanistan, identifying stores of valuable natural resources. Mr. Fruth, I recognize you're not a geologist, but you have focused on great power competition, including as it relates to China. What might be the impact if those U.S. government geological surveys become available to the Taliban and or the Chinese if they engage in partnerships with the Taliban for resource extraction?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the point that I am not a geologist or a scientist. But I would say that effectively it improves the conditions for China to exploit Afghanistan's rare minerals. They're mapped better. I think the airfields have been improved dramatically in the 20 years that we've been there. They can pull copper from Mezainik. They can pull gold and rare earths from Ghazni, Kandahar, Nimroz, Herat. And then they can drive down from Nimroz and Farah. They can drive down the Pakistan-Iran border to the port of Gwadar for international shipping, or they can just go through Badakhshan as part of their Belt and Road Initiative into China.
My time's running out, but in the white paper you allude to collaboration with the PACs. Can you elaborate on Pakistan's goals through the relationship with China and Afghanistan?
Sure. So Pakistan is essentially acting as an intermediary between China and these Sunni terror groups. They're financially incentivized by China to do so. They're in a difficult current economic state. They're reliant on their loans from the IMF with quarterly periodic reviews and disbursement periods, and they're FATF gray listed. So I think that one of the ways to potentially combat this is to apply financial pressure on Pakistan as the gatekeeper of this hybrid threat network that includes China and 4 Sunni terror groups.